Hello YouTube, I'm Tom, and in today's video I'm going to show you a couple of really good ways to use up leftover epoxy putty, such as greenstuff or milliput, to enhance your bases and terrain and create cool micro dioramas to spice up your battlefields. Perhaps somewhere in the history of the hobby someone has mixed the perfect amount of putty for the task they wanted to do, but I always, even when I'm trying really hard, mix around 10 times as much as I need. And this has led me to get creative about not wasting it. For the sake of the video, I'm going to be mixing the putty I want to use instead of waiting for leftovers. And I like to work about 50-50 greenstuff to milliput because I prefer its properties. Also, I lubricate all my tools with Nivea hand cream. For more on this and loads of great greenstuff tips, check out Modern Synthesist on YouTube. Link in the description. Let's start with my favourite thing to make if I have just a little putty left. Mushrooms. And who doesn't love mushrooms? Sorry. I start by clipping a bunch of short lengths of wire or styrene, generally whatever's closest to hand, base of some type and some blue tack. Then I roll a small ball and push it into the back of a sculpting tool, or anything with a good convex dome, to create the underside of the mushroom, and then I jab this onto the wire. If the head is small, you can get away without sculpting a stalk, especially if the head will be really close to the ground. Also, if you aren't confident adding a stalk while the cap is still malleable, you can wait until the putty dries and add the stalk later. If you do want a sculpted stalk, I often do this before adding the cap. I wrap a little putty around the wire and push it into a rough cylinder shape. Again, this doesn't need to be perfect as it will be mostly hidden by the cap. While doing this, I make sure to leave a couple of mils of wire exposed to push into the cap. As an alternative to traditional mushrooms, I also like to make these spore caps. Again, they're a basic cylindrical stalk over wire with a ball of putty on top. To make them more organic, I've just poked random holes in them. Simple as that. Here's a whole bunch I made. I made the pointy ones by rolling a cone and pressing the base as with the others. These are stuck into an offcut of XPS rather than using blue tack. When I have much more leftover putty, I like to make larger organics, like plants and cacti, on bases like micro dioramas. These make awesome, characterful scatter terrain. I start with unused bases like these. I can't remember where they're from, but they work perfectly. Occasionally, when I have putty that is so cured it's getting impossible to use, I will smash it onto one of these bases and sculpt basic rocks or undulations, and come back to them later. Cacti are good as they're made from large basic shapes. Here I'm using cut down rods of sprue from one of my wife's Gundam kits to wrap in putty to make long ribbed cacti like these. I push the putty into a cylinder with tapered ends, leaving enough sprue to hold onto and glue into the base later. I then use a lubed up old retractable box cutter blade to very carefully push in some grooves. The combo of slippery cream and sharp blade is not great, but they are a really useful tool for lots and lots of sculpting. A great tip for making the smaller round cacti is to start with a ball of tin foil glued onto a base, and then wrap it in a thin layer of putty. I've also previously made larger cacti, making multiple sausages of foil. On some of these, I like to add detail in the form of flower heads and pods. The flower heads are made from a strip of flattened putty, concertinaed and pinched at the connecting end. The pods are just tiny balls pushed in the middle with a ball on the end of a sculpting tool. I've also tried making this type of cacti. They take significantly more effort as they require an armature, but look really interesting. For this one, I cut 3 strands of wire, wrapped and bent them into shape and glued them into the base. I then take balls of putty and push them into ear shapes around the wire. I'd recommend building this sort of thing over time, slowly adding sections over the other dried bits. If you're feeling spicy like me though, you can try it all at once, but you need to be super careful not to destroy the layers below when adding the new ones. You can see me adding other bits to the base here and there. These are another thing I like to use excess putty to make. To make them, I take moulds from various things. Most of mine are from old necromunda bulkheads from the 90s, as their structural detail works amazingly well in press moulds. There are loads of tutorials for making moulds from Oyumaru or blue stuff on YouTube, so I won't repeat them here. There'll be a link to a good one in the description. These push moulds are really fantastic if you aren't feeling creative and want to dispose of your leftover putty really quickly, and I always have a bunch in arm's reach when I start sculpting. So here are the micro dioramas I made. The copper barrel is an 8mm pipe coupling. Some of the ribbed tendrils are putty shaped in rollers, and some are the result of an experiment using this foamy air-dry clay in the same way. I'd bought this stuff for my kids to play with, but had a little go with it myself. It dries like stiff EVA foam and holds detail well, but I'm not sure how sturdy it will be long term. Each of the bases also have PVA and sand toppers for texture and a nice bit of weight. For painting, they all received a base coat of black undercoat through the airbrush, before getting a quick shade of dark purple, followed by layers of green to subtly shade the organic parts. Green isn't 100% necessary here, so feel free to go rogue with other colours too. Also, you could build up these layers almost as well with the dry brush or speed paint, although some of the angles might make dry brushing difficult. To be honest, simple is fine for these. They're just scatter at the end of the day. I really enjoy these little palette cleansers. They're really low-risk creations that really spice up a battlefield. They can be simple scatter, objectives, or even hazardous plants. I'd really recommend some thermoplastic like Oyumaru to anyone playing with epoxy putty, but using simple skills on plants and fungi is also a great way to practice. And, best of all, we're avoiding needless waste. So what do you think? Reckon you'll have a go at something here? I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. Or, if you have some awesome suggestions of your own, please share them too. See you, YouTube!